Hello, my dear colleagues. I'm really happy to be with you, and thank you, my dear friend Patricia, that you gave me possibility to share my experience with all of you. So, and I will try to start my presentation. Okay. And let me tell you a little bit about myself. Today I will tell you about my favorite topic. When you change the body, you change the posture. And my name is Dr. Maria Vasilyeva. I'm not only orthodontist and osteopathist either. In few countries, they call me the chiropractor. So I'm assistant professor in People's Friendship University of Russia. Is the Department of Pediatric Dentistry and Orthodontia. Our university is huge, especially for foreigner peoples, and our university in Moscow, and this is the nice city with nice and kind people. We have about 20 million citizens in Moscow, and especially my university, we have a lot of foreigner students from 160 maybe countries. Oh, and a lot of faculties, a lot of 10 institutes inside of our university, and about 130 departments. So this is our university, and you can see our students from different countries with a lot of different cultures. And why I'm trying to tell you about the bite and the posture, because for all dentists, the most important task to get is not only aesthetic result, and the best, the more important task is to get a long-term stability result. And why it's so important? Because how to get this long-term stability result? And I like to say the eye sees only what the mind is prepared to comprehend. So why we have so many relapses in orthodontic treatment? I'm sure you agree with me that most of you in your practice has a lot of relapse. And of course, I used to have a lot of relapse before then I started to do osteopathy in my practice. And before I start to think about posture, about muscles, about a lot of different things. So what is the reason? We have three main reasons. Is a structural problem like premature contacts, or specific in sport or music, or some trauma, scar, and another things. The problem with the knee, with the pelvis, with another bones. And another main reason is a problem with the biochemistry in the body, like the problem with the stomach, liver, hormones, metabolism, and other things. Everything, what happened in our body, everything involved in our posture, and of course in our bite. So, and another, the third main reason is mental disorders. Of course, today I don't have the time to tell you about everything, but I will show you just 2 cases, and maybe in this time we will start to talk about some of these reasons. You know that everything depends on posture and body balance, and we will see it today. When a baby just born, the baby don't have any teeth, they don't have any bite, and after a few years, this scalp is different, totally different. And this person has already a lot of teeth and some bite like normal occlusion or malocclusion or some problem with position with their teeth. And why it happened? Look at them before and after a few years. Why is so changed? Because before, when the baby just born, the baby didn't have any temporal fossa or condylus. And after a few years, we can see so many different types of condylus and so many different types of fossa, temporal fossa. Why? Have you ever thought about that? So of course, I know you thought about that. So why does this particular occlusion and TMG develop? If we look, we can say that occlusion is the place for adaptation for all our life, for all what we did in our life. How we sleep, how we eat, how we chew in, swallow in, breathe in, and a lot of things. How we jump in, how we do sports and music. And at the same time, all dentists change the occlusion, change the occlusion called occlusal contacts. When we put the brackets or another appliance, we immediately change the position of the teeth. We immediately change any small contacts in our teeth. So, and we destroyed this adaptation. We destroyed the adaptation of our life. And all this adaptation focused on the bite. And of course, if we change any one contact in our bite, we immediately involve to the posture, to the feet position, to the TMG position. We change everything, the hormones, emotions, and a lot of different things. So why it happened? Most of them happen through the muscle chain. We know the very nice knowledge about myofascial meridian, and we call it an anatomical train. This is very interesting knowledge. And what is very important, the interstitial tissue not only act as the shade of muscles, bone, and organs, but also passes through many layers. So it's a lot of connection. It's these connection units our movements and functions into a single whole. So, and this is very important to know. This is very important to know if the planes in our body are not parallel and not perpendicular to human's body is disbalance. And let's start to see. I would like to show one case. This is the male, 11 years old. This is the really nice boy. Look at his posture, disbalance. You can see how he stands. You can see the position of their arms, and look at his teeth. We can see the class 1 on the right side, class 2 on the left side, midline shift, and we can see the mandible deviation. It's a really important thing. Why it happened? Of course, we can see the TMG dysfunction. We can see the difference in the TMG area, different shape, and we can see the mandible deviation. What can we say about that? That he has chewing using only one side of his mouth, and we can see the inclination of the all low incisors to the left side, perhaps because his milk teeth was extracted too early. And what is very important when we ask him to smile, look it very intensively. What can we see when he's smiling? He is moving his head to the left side. So this is really strange. Why he do like this? Maybe because when he's smiling very big smile, he tied his teeth and he like switch on the muscle train. And if he's trained in the neck, in the mandible, work differently, so his mandible immediately moves to the one side, whereas at that side where there more tension of muscles. Let's start to think. When he lost his milk teeth, and you can see it on the left side, and he started to use his tongue like to check what happened in that area, because he lost his milk teeth and started to use his tongue to move there like a bad habit. And it's very quickly he starts to have a bad habit to move his tongue in this way. And of course, our tongue can be the best appliance in our orthodontic job, or can be worst reason for bite disorders, because form is determined by function. So the tongue is the biggest and biggest muscle, but the tongue has 70 muscles, so it's a huge huge organ in our mouth that can be the best appliance or the worst reason for bite disorders. So look, we start to use the myofunctional therapy, and 2 months later, we already, before that, we can see the tendency to the cross bite on the left side, because he had a mandible deviation. But after 7 months, we can see already no tendency to the cross bite, but he still has class 1 and a class 2. But at the same time, already no crossbite. Is the good win in this time, and we can see his teeth inside. After that, we start to use removable functional appliance to correct the midline position, because inadequate mandible position leads to alteration of the cervical vertebra, which cause chronic trauma and pain of the neck. And if you remember, he moves his head every time when he smiles. 16 months later, only after functional appliances, 2 myofunctional and removable functional appliances, we can see this situation in his mouth. And 3 years totally, if we can see his buccal set without any fixed appliance, we can see the very nice position and the good airways and the good position of mandibles and the incisor inclination. Everything is fine. You can see how everything changed. So without any fixed appliance, and this is 1.5 years later, no orthodontic treatment, and at the same time, he had a lot of osteopathic support. The chiropractors, kinesiologists, osteopathists, all of them were, worked with this patient. And look at his later. Okay, and 1.5 years later, without any orthodontic treatment, only with the osteopathic support, we can see his posture. Look at his posture. If we compare two posture when he started in 2017, so 3.5 years later, we can see how he starts to stand more nicer, more correctly, and very straight. Look at his position of his head. This is very important test. Every time try to look of your patients and the profile, just in normal position, just ask him visual straight to see somewhere on the horizon, to look at the horizon, and you can notice his Frankfurt horizontal plane. Before it moves up, but after treatment, after functional treatment, his head, his Frankfurt horizontal plane looks very horizontally. And if we look at the literature, we can see Lally Powell knowledge about the body always adapt to put the head in correct position relative to the true horizontal. And okay, this is 2017, just observation, and we can see how everything changed during these few years. This is the myofunctional treatment. Okay, after that was removable functional appliance, and this is just observation. I like it. Maybe it's not perfect. Maybe just if he wants to change everything perfect, we can fix an appliance like brackets or liners or something just for few months, the couple months, the 3-4 months, and finally we will get the excellent result. But he is happy to use this result because no any retainers. You don't need to use any retainers in this case, because he had only functional treatment and osteopathic support. We can see, for my opinion, is the one of the best results. And let's show you another case with this is adults, and we can tell about occlusal canting. He was referred to me from another orthodontist. She already had the 4 years orthodontic treatment using brackets. And we can see the occlusal canting. Look at her smile, her face, and her frontal self. And this situation, after we removed her brackets, and you can see situation with occlusal after 4 years orthodontic treatment. And this position of the frontal view parallel to her eyes. And look this, look at the panoramic. We can see the huge wave of her occlusion. And of course, we replace the bracket, we extract the 4 third molars, but at the same time, she didn't have any TMG problem. She didn't have deviation or deflection or other things. But at the same time, we can see her lip protrusion. And very important to look at her tongue. She has a tongue asymmetry, and like a tongue deviation, like a tongue rotation. Look at her buccal self and panoramic. If we see the shape of her tongue, we can see the low and backward position of her tongue, and asymmetry and rotation. Everything involved in her occlusion canting. We start to retreatment, we fix the new brackets, we start to give her osteopathic support, and 3 months later we can see how everything changed. And for me, it's the best situation how to change the tongue. It's totally different. And look at how occlusion 5 months later, and we use the 1 micro implant to change the position, to help to change the position of the mandible archway. And we use the silent steel ligature to fix the maxilla, and using the maxillary elastics. She used it by herself from mandible to microimplant. And look at this, the months, 8 months later, how everything was changed. And look at the panoramic self. And of course, the first time was the finished painting, and it was the utility archway. And you can see they changed the inclination of incisors. So, and her treatment was only 1 year. We can see how everything will change. And what is the most important? I will show you a little bit later. If we compare the two buccal self, we can see They change the position of frontal horizontal, the inclination of incisors, change position of head, and a lot of other things. So look at her lips, a very nice position of lips. Look at the compare, and look at her frontal horizontal line. It's a much better position of the head, as I told you already with that guy. And every time when we have the wrong position of the head, wrong position of the proper horizontal, especially if it's class 2, skeletal class 2 malocclusion, everything form the hyperlordosis of the spine, cervical and lumbar, shoulder deviation, displacement of the pelvis, tension in sacrum, and this condition can cause myofascial pain, tension in the neck muscles, and compression of the vertebral joint of the cervical spine can manifest itself as the reflected pain and weakness of the muscles of the arm and back, and other things. Look at her position, tongue, before and after. Of course, we use a lot of osteopathy support. And in the practical courses, I can usually show this is simple techniques. This is 2 different simple techniques to change the situation with the tongue. It's a really simple. You can use it in your hand. If one day I can have chance to visit you, I can of course to help you, to teach you how to use this simple technique to change the situation with the tongue. It's just to use your hand and to use your brain and to use the breathing of your patient. And there are 2 different techniques for adults and for kids. And look at her smile, very nice smiling, and very straight. And this is the 2 years retention. What change? After 2 years retention, everything is perfect. But look at the 3 years retention. She got married, and what happened? For first moment, you can't see anything worse. But look at her gingiva, look at her recession. You can see the start of the recession in the canal. The 2 years was everything excellent, but what happened the 3 years? Changing the posture, look at her posture. It's what happened. Again, the tongue start to change their position. We can see the shoulder deviation. We can see the head position different. But why? Because she used her baby only in the one hand, and another hand, I don't know, she cooked something every time because she's a good wife and she wants to make some nice food for her husband. And can you imagine, you use your baby in one hand and you use the spoon in another hand and cooks so different way, and try to imagine this position of your body, how everything turn around the vertical axis. And of course, through the muscle chain, through the anatomical muscle change, all muscles start to change. Of course, the tongue either. And it can be reason to change the all occlusal contacts in this moment. And she started to get premature contact in that area, in the canine area. So, and a lot of things goes through the hyoid bone. The hyoid is a very small bone, of course, you know, and of course this is very important. This is the small bone that is shaped like a horseshoe and lays under the muscle of the tongue. The hyoid bone is the only bone in the human body that does not connect to other bones, so but grows into the thickness of the muscles. So it is the main bone for body balance and the basis for the attachment of the muscles of the tongue. Means the body balance depends on the position of the tongue. So if we see the hyoid bone like the two part of shape of the bone, so it's mean the hyoid bone has rotation. If the hyoid bone has rotation, the tongue has rotation, and of course the shoulder deviation and the head position and other things. And you can see the very high position of the hyoid bone. In this case, your patient has a lot of tongue in his mouth and push the incisors to go to change their inclination to the protrusion way. And this is a lower position of the hyoid bone, so it's when the old tongue goes down and goes back. So in this case, you will never get stability result. A lot of things go through the gastricus, and musculus digastricus stabilize the temporal bone, and of course occipital bone and the mandible. And this is the small view about correlation between mind and the whole body. If you have any one problem of all of this, finally you can get all these disorders: visual impairment, hearing impairment, malocclusion and tongue displacement, TMG overload, hyoid bone displacement, compensatory displacement of the head anteriorly or posteriorly, thoracic hyperkyphosis, lumbar and cervical compensatory hyperlordosis, pelvis distortion, flat feet, pes planus, and valgus feet, and a lot of disorders. So we have to be very attentively. And in our dental practice, it is customary to focus on the changes and occlusion of teeth, not consider the variety of extra-articular factors. So understanding the relationship of functional processes in the body prompts us to pay special attention to the feet in organs of proprioception. But about all these correlation, we will talk the next time. Maybe we will see each other in the practical course. So, and I like to finish my lecturing with the very nice words of Horatio Marconi. The good teeth is a good skull, and the good skull is a good body. And thank you so much for your attention. And I hope you to have a good health and to be like this couple. And she's 94 and she's 91. So have a good health and be like by them. And please write me a message. Don't I try to reply every message.